Hello, Gareth.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi, good evening. I'm
How are
well,
you?
thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Are you in
Yeah,
Dresden at the moment?
yeah, yeah. I'm in
Okay.
Dresden at the moment, exactly.
Have you been rehearsing?
Yes, we're currently setting up Swan Lake
Yeah.
for the first performance the 30th of April. So we're well into rehearsals, setting up that. There's also some changes that need to be made because of COVID. So there needs to be some adjustments also to the choreography, to the numbers. There's contact restrictions also on certain things. So it's taking a little bit longer to set up, also needing a bit more stage time as well than usual. But we're well into the process. So we've been on stage every day this week. So it's been quite a heavy week, but yeah.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting. We haven't been on stage since my last time on stage was the general rehearsal of Nutcracker. I had the general rehearsal of Nutcracker, and that was the last time. We didn't make it to opening night. But now we're back on stage.
And when was that? When was that?
That was the general was, I believe, the 23rd of November. Yeah, I think the 23rd of November. And we didn't make it to do any of the shows then.
That's so tragic, really. But tell me, when you when lockdown was announced in March 2020, what were you busy with at that time?
We were. It's funny. It's kind of. It must be a sempre opera curse. Because we're 3 times now that before opening night we've gone into some form of lockdown or had to stop, let's say. So in March we were preparing a quadruple program, a quadruple bill. That was a mixed bill which included Symphony in C. It included Errand into the Maze by Martha Graham. It included a piece by a dancer here, Songs for a Siren. And the 4th piece, what was the 4th piece? I don't have it in my head right now, sorry. But we were preparing a quadruple program, and we stopped working the day before the first performance. Yeah.
Oh, that must have been such a disappointment.
Oh, it was painful. I had the first show of the Errand into the Maze by Martha Graham. It's an 18-minute pas de deux. And being that I'm not, I haven't danced with Martha Graham's company, you know, we had trained for months. I mean, I had already done the piece 2 years ago, but I was training separately from the rest of the company just for this pas de deux, for the things that it required. And yeah, so it was difficult. But at that moment, to be honest, when that first happened, even though we missed our first performance, we didn't really know what was to come. You know, it was kind of like, it was for us, it was kind of like, oh, we can't do the performance tonight, but maybe next week we will perform. It wasn't, that's how it felt. It really felt that way.
But you know, I think everybody, or I say everybody, I think most people thought that, you know, it's going to be 3 weeks or it's going to be a few months or so. I mean, I live on cloud 9, so I thought 3 weeks, you know.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that, because that was probably one of the most frustrating things about lockdown for me personally, was work would only plan 2 weeks ahead. So I remember getting the first show was cancelled, and they said, take a long weekend, we'll see on Monday. Then we came back into work for a meeting, and then I remember them then saying, okay, take until next Monday off. And then and then it was then, okay, national lockdown, you know, etc. And still at that point, they were only really working in 2-week blocks. So what was really difficult for me, and I think for most people, for us, it's if I know that I have 2 weeks off and I have to be ready on the Monday after the 2 weeks, I would probably take a few days off and then slowly build myself up. And what was difficult, I think, was that it was 2 weeks which turned into 6-7 weeks in total. But it was difficult not knowing actually, you know, like summer, we know, okay, we have 6 weeks off, and then you take a good few weeks off, and then you start prepping yourself again. And I think what was frustrating or difficult about this, it was we didn't really know when we were going to come back and to what extent. So I think I could have relaxed a lot. Looking back on it, I could have chilled out a lot more than I did, to be honest. But that's hindsight.
Yeah, but how long were you off in total in the first part?
In the first part, we were out of the theatre for just over 6 weeks, 7 weeks.
Yeah. And could you then go back and in the studios?
Yeah, so after those 7 weeks, we went into very small controlled groups of just class. So I think that there were only 10 people in the room in our big studio. So it was strict on the groups were set. So we had our time slot. And there were many different rules. You couldn't get into the studio before your class. As soon as class finished, it was everyone out. It was very controlled. There were a lot of cleaning regulations, also about the air conditioning system, how long it would take for the air to refilter itself. So there were many strict rules. Luckily, I think I was at maybe 9 o'clock in the morning. I was in the first class, so that was good for me. But some people had it difficult with maybe having class at 5, 6 o'clock every day.
Oh yeah. But
so
you were really,
we had that.
You were very lucky to go back so soon, because many dancers couldn't. Many companies didn't. You know, they. I think here at Vienna, they delivered or they gave the dancers flooring so that they could do some work at home. And many that I speak to tell me that they did Zoom classes at home and so on for a very long time. So
yeah, we were also delivered all lino for our floors. Funny enough, in the first lockdown, we weren't actually provided Zoom classes by work. But I think also, to be honest, there was so much out there. There were so many companies making, I remember Dutch National making it open on YouTube every day, things like that, that I'm not sure if it was 100% necessary. We had so much material. We had so much there available to us from all companies across the world that I don't know if it would have really helped if our teachers also were on Zoom with us every day. Our director was amazing with us, saying, chill out, guys, it's okay. He was incredible with us, and there was no pressure for people to, you know, be busting out class every day at home or things, although we could if we wanted to. But we were also delivered lino flooring and things like that. I think that we were one of the first companies back in the studio as well. I remember that moment of going back in, and of course some social media, some people posted, and it seemed like we really were across Europe, let's say, one of the first back in the studio, 100%.
Which is amazing. Who's your director?
Aaron Watkin.
Oh, okay, lovely. Aaron that he supported you all so well.
Yeah, he was really fantastic in that moment. I think for many people it was extremely stressful, as you can imagine. You know, also for all the people who are not, let's say, their families aren't in Europe or they're from Australia, and it was difficult for many people. But he was really motivating but positive in the same way. He really stuck with us actually, and was very very helpful in that time, I think, for everyone. Yeah,
well, then he's a great leader if he did that for you.
Yeah. Yeah, he really was in that time. He really, I think he helped a lot of people. He made us all feel okay with the situation that we were in. And he always stayed positive. He would send us sometimes quotes, and
Oh,
it was always,
wow.
no, it was really quite nice.
Mm. And then, so you went back, but you didn't do performances, or did you do a streaming or recorded performances? What did you do, or just mostly class?
No, we just trained then,
Okay.
basically.
Mm.
We basically just took class, which then classes got extended, and we were able to do more. We were able to do more. We slowly started putting the program together of what we were going to open the new season with.
Okay.
But we didn't actually really rehearse with a daily schedule as such. And we moved. What we did is we also moved forward our summer holiday by a couple of weeks as well, because it was obvious that we were going to be able to probably perform after summer. So what we did is, I remember we moved forward our summer holiday a little bit so we could get back a bit earlier. That would also help set up the first program after summer.
Mm. But that's amazing, because I think that for dancers, this is what I talk to dancers about, is this this idea that, or this feeling that dancers might have, because you always work together and you always work in this group together. And also you work in this huge space together. So for dancers, and you know, if I talk to dancers, they always say that the confinement of the homes, you know, where they had to do Zoom classes or something, it wasn't the same. It didn't feel the same, you know, and they couldn't jump, and the movement didn't feel the same. So this must have been for you wonderful, the fact, even if it was just a short period of time, but that you could go and also interact with each other, because I think dancers use that energy as well amongst each other.
Yeah, I think that was our real savior, that we got back into the studio quite quickly, because 4 to 6 weeks at home is obviously doable, but you can see also, I think in Europe we got quite lucky, but in America, you know, months and months and months and months. So I think for us it was really we were just lucky that we got back into the studio quite soon, because let's face it, I mean, it's throughout the pandemic, I think what we've seen is what can be done at home. Just regarding our profession, it just doesn't quite fit like other professions.
Exactly.
And training at home, exactly like you said, can be frustrating. Just to do bar work, and you know, you're either on some point of furniture or part of the kitchen, and before you know it, you can't do everything, and then you start, your hips aren't level, and there's all sorts, and you just find that you're creating more problems for yourself, let alone can't really turn, can't really jump. And of course it's always more motivating to be in a studio setting, let alone to have other dancers, professionals, colleagues, artists around you that you always feed off anyway. It was difficult to motivate at home, for sure.
And like a dancer told me that, you know, if the person giving the Zoom class is in a studio or in a wonderful big room in their house, you know, and she's standing with a chair in a very small apartment, also that visual doesn't go well, you know, that doesn't keep you motivated. But
I think it was that is a funny point about about it all is that all of a sudden, you know, you're visualizing other colleagues that also, you know, in a big ballet company, you don't have contact to everyone. Let's say I haven't seen most people's apartments from the company, and all of a sudden, you're right, you see other colleagues in living rooms or whatever, or you do see the teacher, let's say, who has been allowed to go into the theater to film these classes, you know, in this big, beautiful open studio. So yeah, you're completely right.
So that's but Gareth, tell me, how did you start in ballet?
I started ballet at around the age of 6. My sister is also a dancer. My sister's also a dancer. She's also in the company here with me. She's also in the company, right?
Fantastic.
She's a few years older than me, and when I was younger, my father was away a lot with work. He was away a lot, so what often happened is I would always just be carried around with my mum. You know, she would have to pick up my sister here, there, and everywhere, and countless ballet lessons a week. I would be there waiting at the door, and I think as a young boy, if you ever see a room full of girls, then often you just want to run inside. So that's kind of how I started. That's how I kind of started at the age of 6. Then joined Royal Ballet Junior Associates at the age of 8 until 10, and then I joined White Lodge at the age of 10. Yeah. Okay.
Where were you? Where did you live in England? Where did you grow up?
Actually grew up in Chepstow. It's actually in Wales. It's just right on the border, right where the Severn River is. So it's not so far from Cardiff, but really directly on the border. And that's where I grew up, let's say. And then from the age of 10, it was to White Lodge.
White Lodge. So it was quite a distance to travel for you home. So were you also only going home over the holidays?
Right in the beginning, I think I can remember going home on weekends. I think in the first year at White Lodge, you don't work on a Saturday, I think. So I remember very in the beginning going home, and I can remember then missing out on what was happening at school on the weekend. So I think very quickly, I wasn't a child who ever got homesick. Before you know it, then I would just go home on either Exeat weekends, I think, where everyone has to go home, or half term or Christmas, things like that. But otherwise, I was pretty much there the whole time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think it's that atmosphere over the weekends, because then there was a little bit more freedom.
Right, exactly. And I think, there were always things happening. And I think they were always in the beginning the same group of people staying, mostly the people who live further away. Of course, all the kids that lived in London, of course, they would always go home as well. So, but before you know it, I think we were all mostly staying on the weekends.
Yeah. And but was it there that you decided that you thought, well, you would love to be a dancer, you know, like a profession? Was it, or was there a specific point where you could remember that you thought, this is what I want to do?
It's a really good question. Because I think that often when you join White Lodge at such a young age, it's a really difficult time for anyone to decide your career path at the age of 10 or 11, let's say. I can't say more so for boys than for girls, but boys often develop later, you know. Girls seem to be more often than not be a little bit more mature. Of course, we're talking at the age of 10, 11, it's ridiculous, but I think it's quite hard for a child at that age. Of course, you know, they can see an idol or something and think, oh, that's something that I want to do when I'm older. I think to know and understand the profession fully at that age is impossible. And I think that at White Lodge, often you join and it's kind of like this or nothing else type of thing. So I don't remember really when I joined White Lodge. You know, of course, I thought, you know, I want to be a ballet dancer. I want to be a principal dancer whether I really knew what that meant at that point or what that entailed, I think is a different story as to me saying, yeah, this is what I want to do. And then I think as the years go on through White Lodge, you slowly start to see, okay, this is what it takes. This is what it, and I think that once I realized that it was a profession that I could do, you know, after a few assessments, appraisals, and you start to see, oh, where you sit within the class and things that maybe you realize, oh, I actually could do this, you know. I think that I was fairly certain at a reasonably young age that it was a career path that I wanted. With a few minor hiccups on the way, I think that often, you know, it doesn't take much at that age to think, oh, well, you know, maybe there's other things that I would also like to do. But definitely from when I was finishing up at White Lodge, going to upper school, it was, for me, it was pretty clear.
Yeah, that's interesting that you see it that way, because I think in you know, schools like White Lodge and upper school and the ballet schools, there's a very much a I would almost say like a tunnel where the young dancers are, you know, they see only they don't, because they're so full on at these schools that they don't see anything else. And this is why you're talking about assessments, and many dancers get assessed out, not always because of their capability, but sometimes also because of their body, you know, the shape of their bodies.
Of course.
So, for example, girls, you know, enter the school with a specific build, and then when they developed as girls and teenagers, then the body is not then suddenly for some reason not anymore you know, suitable, which is also a very difficult thing, I think, for youngsters to, especially for this idea that this is my body and my body is my instrument. Whereas with musicians, the instrument is, I'm not talking about singing, even singing, you know, even it doesn't matter what you look like, that it's the voice, you know, it's the, whereas with dancers, it's very much about the physique, you know. And for a young age, you know, to be able to deal with that also is quite difficult, I think.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, you're completely right. I think that it's difficult as essentially children, you know, to really understand it at that point. I mean, looking back, if you think that, unfortunately, I have to use a girl as like females as the example here, because I think this career path is, first of all, it's cruel to most, let alone, I think, unfortunately, to the girls, even more so, you know. So that it's a shame that I have to use girls as the example, but for a 12-year-old girl to understand that maybe, that she's going through puberty and her body doesn't quite suit what they're looking for. I mean, if you think of, for a 12-year-old girl to understand that something completely out of her control has happened, and that she doesn't fit this idea anymore of what maybe that school sees necessary to go forward. It's actually quite, it's a little bit scary. So maybe it's a blessing that at that point, maybe we as children or as humans don't quite fully understand it all. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. But you're right in that it is kind of horrendous at that age also to be judged on something that is essentially out of your control. And I think that all bodies can develop, not only just in a shape, or, you know, little things creep in that kind of hinder people developing in the right way as well. But you're right, it's it's tough.
But it's for this reason that I also think that artists should perhaps also be more open about their careers and the career path, also about the art. You know, not just personally, that I mean personal stories or so, but this type of thing, you know, where I think many young dancers think that is the end of the road for them when they get assessed out, say, for example, a school like the Royal Ballet School. So they get assessed out, and then it's almost as if there's a ranking under the schools to say, and it's almost as if the children might be aware that if they don't go to the Royal Ballet School, then they don't have a career in dance, or they don't have a career in ballet. But if artists, dancers, for example, start talking about their path, you know, this is how I did it, this is where I went, and this is how I became a dancer. And not everybody has to go through one specific school or one specific training to become this artist, because inherently it's the art, it's not the ballet, it's not necessarily the physique that, like you say, for that specific school, that physique was not suitable. But that we separate that then from being the artist, and that the dancers start talking about, this was my path, it wasn't so easy, but I chose this route to go, and this this is what I do. And that the focus should more be on the art really than where did you train, or you know, what I mean, I know in dance it is important, the proportions and ballet and the height and all those things. This is just what we know. But yeah, this idea that, you know, if you look at a stage, on the stage, and you look at the dancers and it all looks so effortlessly, that there's a story behind everybody, you know.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I think that is exactly, you've just nailed it exactly, kind of on the point there, is that the problem is that they're judging children, so that they're not it's not considered at that age other, you know, other quantities that come into it, let's say artistry, musicality, you know, all the, you know, we could speak for hours about all of these extra things that makes a professional dancer or ballet dancer. But you're right that it is this narrow-minded on, like, oh, this child has bowed legs, you know, they're never going to be a ballet dancer, which is just at this point, as a professional, and as all the things that I've seen, you know, looking now, is absolutely zero problem if a child has bowed legs. Absolutely not, you know. And I think that then you're right that it's our duties as professionals to educate, but also just pass on personal experiences, you know, things that we've seen, or it doesn't even have to be necessarily my pathway, but also other pathways of all people around me that I've also experienced or witnessed. And I think that it is hard for young dancers to know that at that point, that actually kind of doesn't really matter how you get somewhere. It's just, are you happy where you end up? You know, and that's what's most important, is, are you happy with your lifestyle and with your profession? And how or where you go to get to that point, at the end of the day, means zero, because I could have been trained in my living room by my grandma, and if it got me to where I am now, and gave me the same platform, it really doesn't matter. No director's bothered about, to be honest, at that point, what school you're at when you're at the age of 10.
Yeah, and this is also the you know, I think in a way we the art, this is why I also feel that art should be taught in schools from entry level, so that children have also this exposure to art, this relationship to art, so that it's not this, you know, the Royal Ballet School, for example, I take the Royal Ballet School, but any ballet school, any art school, for example, take in a certain amount of pupils, because there's a certain amount of scholarships and there's a certain amount of funding. So they can only take so many children, or so many dancers, which makes it very exclusive. And so if you take, for example, I can imagine if you take for an audition, how many girls and boys come for audition and would love to be dancing, but there's not the possibility. So if we take, and of course not everybody is suitable and not everybody can make that a career, but if we could take, for example, a school and change the education system so that art could be as important subject as maths and science, so that we give all children the possibility. Not all will become dancers, not all will become musicians, just as not everybody is becoming a scientist or not everybody is a mathematician. But we are exposed to that. We are taught that, and we know what it's all about. And if children understand art and artistry and what it's all about, then we're giving them much more opportunity to express themselves, to understand, to appreciate, to have experienced this brain development, to deal with disappointments, to have certain motivations, and that in a return will give a society where we have people who can appreciate art, people who have these skills that you have, that you developed through becoming an artist, but that all children have equally the exposure to art.
I think yeah, you're completely right. I think it comes down to exposure and it comes down to accessibility.
Yeah,
those are two kind of fundamental failings. I think you're right in the education system, the way it's set up, you know, it's outdated. I think in most countries, I think the education system is simply outdated. Could name you millions of things that I learned in school that no one is ever going to use in their life. But you're right. Children learning what art is, learning how to be creative, learning how to express themselves, and also at that point have a little bit of fun, also to be able to to express themselves and just have a bit of freedom. I think that is crucially important than some of the other things that we waste hours learning, which no one is ever going to use again in the rest of their life. So I think that you're right. The education system is massively outdated. And I think that you're right that children don't unfortunately understand it. I think that actually a lot of adults don't understand art in general. And I think it completely comes down to exposure. It comes down to accessibility, like you said. It's a real difficult hurdle to come over. I think that, there are many outreach programs that seem to, over the last 10 to 20 years, seem to be getting a lot more momentum. Of course, a lot more government funding and things like this, but I think that it all comes down from also a little bit like, the government that you have,
Exactly,
I'm not sure if we've spoken mostly about the UK here, let's say.
No, I'm talking, well, I don't know much about the school systems, but I just know everybody I've spoken to in Europe, of course, in Germany, and where the arts seem to be much more funded, or freelance artists get more support. But I hear things like, for example, I've spoken to a pianist who in Vienna who told me that actually the year that he in his final year in school, he was the only pupil who played an instrument. And then, these things, then I think to myself, well, we live in Vienna, which is actually almost the capital of music. Then it's almost strange to hear that there is just one child in that specific school. I said, don't say it's every school, but it seems to be these pockets, and in America as well. Some schools really, value the art and give the opportunities. But my point is that it should be standard. It should be compulsory.
Universal.
That these three subjects, or the four, the languages, the arts, the sciences, and maths should be on equal level, so that there's not a question of art just being an entertainment factor, but that art is a very valuable subject, for people.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think that it comes from a lack of education. It comes from a lack of understanding, a huge lack of understanding, because I think that what people would also learn is that if these fundamentals were given to these children, it would also, even if these children didn't, I studied maths, right? Of course,
exactly.
But that's not my career choice.
Exactly.
But that's also helped me go forward with life. I think that people would also understand that even if 90% of the children don't go into an art form or whatever, these creative skills that they could learn, or things they could use to so many other valuable experiences moving forward in their life, let alone what they would learn about themselves as well, as young beings on this planet, and learn, to be able to also have, some confidence in themselves and other things. It's much bigger. It's the picture is so much bigger. But you're right, it just doesn't, unfortunately, in some places, I think more so here in kind of places like Germany and Austria, but it just, art doesn't have the respect, the culture doesn't have the respect, and therefore it just kind of, drops down through everything then. So I think the possibilities that could be arise with, if we had that foundation in place, imagine if all school kids fundamentally were taught art forms from a young age and had all these creative projects to do. I mean, the world would be a different place.
I know.
Place.
It's amazing. Do you know what? There's a composer who told me that he did some workshop at a school, 3 days or so, and with children who had no music. I mean, of course, no music education, no. They were young children, so they didn't have it's not older children who already studied music, so young. And he did a little workshop with them composing music, and he said he was amazed how just naturally what they came up with, and this is without any music education. And I was actually thinking, can you imagine if a choreographer went to a group of, or work with a group of young children, and just inspire them a little bit, or just on a very elementary level, just do a little bit of choreography. Can you imagine what these children could come up with if they could do that with composing, and also, I think many young children, it's a way of expression, it's a way of
100%
telling stories also, if they not can't express themselves that well, that it's a way for them to express themselves. But hey, we can only hope and wish.
one day at a time. We can't change the world yet, but
I'm hoping there's somewhere a choreographer who will do that and tell me that that's,
it would almost be,
possible.
as you said it, I just thought that would be a really exciting experiment to see, to
Can
take a group of young kids and just say, almost just give them a task of just to give them some music and say, do whatever you like. It would be quite exciting to see.
Yeah. But I mean, if because I know with choreography, there are many workshops and things, and so I don't know anything about choreography, but I can just imagine, if giving them the little basic idea of what they're creating, to see, what they come up with, because of course they don't have the inhibitions that older children have, so and they very much on that level where they just think they don't think something is right or it's not
100%.
right. They just do what comes out of them,
Exactly.
and that would be
That's the blessing
amazing.
of being that's the blessing of being a child. You have so much
Yes,
freedom,
yes,
because you don't know. So, which
yeah,
is like, actually sometimes just the best ticket is when you don't know what's wrong or right. So you have this sense of freedom
yeah,
that anything is possible, which
yeah.
unfortunately we don't have sometimes as adults. But
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
luckily at my age, we're starting to go that way again. So this is why my children are embarrassed to be with me sometimes.
Goes to kind of you start going back down the other side of whatever. Doesn't matter. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter anymore. Seen it all. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why we say things that we're not supposed to say.
Yeah.
But anyway, but listen, Gareth, what on a light note, what did you do over lockdown that you never had time to do? Did you do anything fun or because of course you had more time now than usual?
Um.
I mean, everybody cleaned their houses, that I know.
Right. And funny enough, I wish that I was. I wish I could tell you way more productive things that I learned another language or that
No,
to be honest,
no,
I tried to use the time that I never have
yeah,
just to get on top of my life in general.
yeah,
And
but
that
that's
could be
yeah.
that could be on basic things like, as you say, oh, I did a deep clean and all of that,
Or
which
just
which
walking,
sound which
Yeah,
sound quite minor, but in the sense of when you're a professional who has zero time in your life, that actually means quite a lot to be to have the time to do those things. I reconnected with a lot of friends, also people here that just over, as we get busy, it can be so stressful, as roles are coming in. And I remember in February alone, I had 14 flights. In just before the month before lockdown, I had 14 flights. I flew to London, I flew to New York. I had to fly back to London again for work, and then I had a gala in Bruges. It was just insane, and I was just like this kind of machine almost, or a zombie. Wasn't even there, let's say, just going from one thing to the next. So I think it was just a good time for me to really take a step back, be grateful for what I had and the lifestyle that I'm living. Think that I was able to do that. Just trying to experience a slower pace of life. I reconnected with some friends and kind of realized that I do need them in my life, let's say.
yeah.
And yeah,
But
but
yeah,
any
I think these things, especially like you say, for a dancer who and your lives are very much occupied by your art, and I mean also musicians as well. But it's like, as a cellist told me yesterday, that walk, and he has a boat, and he just went out on a lake, and just that already,
right.
is something that I think we never had time for, because there was always something, there was always a rush to something. And like you say, all these flights, so you just touch down, and then you're the next thing and the next thing. And yeah, I think it's these things. No, this is it's not, I don't ask that it has to be something specific, but walking, and enjoying
Yeah,
the environment, and
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I remember I would always go outside every day, whether that would be for a walk or on my bike or walk to my sister's place or something. I found that I remember not using my car for weeks. My car stayed there. I didn't get in my car for weeks, and these are often things that I would normally not walk anywhere, just because my shins hurt or whatever,
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
it was about experience these more human
Exactly.
senses of life, let's say, which I think we all did, and gaining a bit of perspective. You know, when you're in the thick of it with working and things and flying here, performing there, where everywhere, you forget about everything else, you know. So it was kind of just a time to take a step back and think, okay, you know, what are we all actually doing here? And just getting a bit of perspective on, you know, work-life balance and everything. And as you say, these more just human things, going outside, walking on the river and breathing in some fresh air for 10 minutes or something like that. Yeah, just getting a better hold on life, I think.
Yeah, I discovered ducks on the pond. I was sitting watching the ducks. Yeah. And you know, I always walk in the park, but I just walk and not, because then, you know, as I say, you go to the next thing. But I just found myself really sitting and watching the ducks. I discovered that male ducks are very jealous.
Okay.
That's the one thing I discovered. Yeah.
Okay.
Very jealous. Yeah. They're very protective over the females. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
just ducks in general, or humans as well?
Oh, well, I didn't watch the men. I just watched the ducks on the pond. Yeah. So, but yeah, there's, you know, these things that we never really think about or notice, you know, because it's you're always, you know, I'm always walking or going somewhere, or, you know, having a thing to do, and yeah. So
yeah, just taking a moment to see what's in front of you at that moment in time. Yeah, for sure.
But listen, Gareth, what is your wish for when this is all over?
Oh, I think that we as artists, and I think the general public as audience members, took many things for granted. They were just kind of always there for us, so we didn't even think about them. You know, I didn't think what it was, you know, didn't think what it was like to perform to a full auditorium. You know, didn't think about, oh, you know, what it was like, you know, to take a bow and have a standing ovation. Of course, it was beautiful in the moment, but I just walked off stage and kind of, you know, thought, oh, great performance. I think there's many things that just took for granted, and of course it's quite sad to see at the moment, you know, trying to perform to an auditorium where there's 300 people there and it fits 2,000 or something. So I think that when it's all over, I'm looking forward to getting back what we had. For me, being able to fill my profession to its fullest, let's say, and for me to have that opportunity to give the public what they want to come and see as well, to give them, to inspire whoever is in that audience, you know, to give them that moment in their day where they're not thinking about all the other things that are going on in their life, you know, to give them that feeling again. And I'm really looking forward to just getting back a few of the things that we had before, you know, for us to be able to work a bit more freely. You know, these special moments that we were having before, which we didn't even think about, but I'm sure next time they come around, we will think about them again. But I think that there's not something specifically, you know, that I'm like, this is exactly what I'm waiting for. But the general way that things were before, I think that we as dancers, we as professionals, as artists, and I think that the public also had didn't really realize what it meant to all of us. Let's say. I'm looking forward to getting that back a bit more.
It's wonderful that you say that about the audience, because I think, you know, this is what most artists also say, that I mean, you said it in a very special way, that, you know, that your appreciation for the audience also, but yes, I do think that artists realize also that that energy has to be there. You know, that's part of the performance for them, you know, and for you. And not that that makes the performance, but that you almost have this communication through this energy, the backwards and forwards, you know. And yeah, that's very true what you said, and beautifully said. And I also think, I wonder also, you said that things can just be more relaxed. Do you find also that the dancers amongst themselves are a bit more reserved, because you as dancers are very much physical and hugging and close to each other? And is there a sense also amongst you that you have to be a bit cautious?
I mean, life, we all have to be cautious, you know. Life's just not what I mean, as you know, dancers are quite yeah, all over each other all the time. You know, I think that, yeah, life is not the same as it was, and the kind of way of being in a company is not the same as it was. I don't think that necessarily everyone is super scared the whole time, and you know, we're still relaxed with how things are. But of course, you don't have contact to all these people, and like you said, everyone hugging and all over each other. We don't have that anymore. We don't. That's the way it is. You know, in work we have to keep our distance. You know, we're constantly being told by our direction 3 meters distance, and so I think that work can be somewhat stressful, just in general, with all these extras. You know, our lives are hard enough as they are sometimes, let alone with all these added pressures and all these extra things. And, you know, can't get 3 meters to anyone except my partner, you know, who I can work with. So I think that, yeah, I don't know if everyone's super scared, cautious. We all have to be, you know. I think in every profession or every human at the moment has to be somewhat cautious. The vibe is, I think, just a little bit not stressed or anything, but it's just like work is more stressful than it used to be, let's say. You know, there's extra things to think about. So yeah.
Well, Gareth, I hope that the performance on the end of April is the end of April, 30th of April. What did you say?
Right, exactly.
I hope that you have enough audience there. What would it be, about 50% or?
I think even less, to be honest. I think even less. I think that they will. It's gonna be not very many people, but it will be a live performance. Hopefully. So
I think people. Yeah, I think everybody will experience everything now almost for the first time again. You know, it's like this. Yeah. So when for a long time 100%. You haven't eaten anything, then there's something specific, then it's like that first moment of the first live show performance. That would be great. But all the best for that, and
thank you.
If ever you hear of a choreographer who did this project, please write to me.
I will do. You'll be the first person that I contact. You will be the first person I contact. But it would be nice.
Gareth, have a lovely evening, and thank you so much for your time.
You too. My pleasure. My pleasure. It was nice speaking to you. Have a nice weekend. Ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.